On the broadcast tonight, President Park Geun-hye carries out a partial reshuffle of the presidential office, appointing a former three-term lawmaker as her chief of staff. The Korean leader also welcomes 4 other newcomers to the nation's top office. Patience wearing thin, and that's what South Korea is saying to North Korea as the North remains tight-lipped on the South's final proposal for talks on the shuttered industrial zone in Gaeseong for more than a week now. And 19 U.S. diplomatic missions in the Middle East and Africa will remain closed through Saturday out of an abundance of caution in response to a potential threat to Western interests from the Al-Qaeda. This is Early Edition at 6. It is noon in Sana'a, 5 p.m. in Beijing, and 6 on a Monday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. Another surprise reshuffle at the nation's top office, although not as major as the first one. President
Park Geun-hye, in a surprise move, carried out a wide-ranging reshuffle of her senior secretaries on Monday after returning from a 5-day vacation.
Our Han Da-eun looks into the president's motives for the changes.
President Park Geun-hye's reshuffle of senior presidential secretaries was larger in scale than expected. The appointment of a new secretary for political affairs was forthcoming as the post had been left empty for 2 months. But to the surprise of many, President Park replaced her chief of staff as well as 4 of her key senior aides. As her new chief of staff, the president has tapped 3-term lawmaker Kim Ki-chun, who has served as the prosecutor general and the justice minister. And she named former South Korean ambassador to the European Union Park Geun-hye as her new senior political affairs secretary. Along with these posts, replacements for the senior presidential secretary for civil affairs, secretary for future strategy, and secretary for employment and welfare were also announced. Analysts say the moves reflect President Park's will to punish her former aides for a series of scandals and the inability to resolve pending political issues such as the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit transcript controversy. Now, former Chief of Staff Ho Tae-yeol is known to have taken a moderate stance towards most state affairs, something insiders say was not in harmony with President Park's hardline policies at times. Watchers say the reshuffle shows President Park's efforts to pick up new momentum for her political affairs in the latter half of the year. Amid worsening conflicts between the ruling and opposition parties over the summit transcript issue, experts say the president was trying to find middle ground by appointing career diplomat Park Geun-hye, who hasn't been involved much in domestic politics, as her new secretary for political affairs. Pundits add that the new faces in the fields of civil affairs, economy, and welfare suggest that President Park is making a push to produce more tangible results from her key campaign pledges. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the nation's political realm, the wrangling continues at the National Assembly over a probe into the spy agency's alleged involvement in last year's presidential election. Spy agency officials and lawmakers held a briefing on Monday, but only after an argument among legislators about whether the contents of their meeting should be made public. Arirang News' Ji Myung-gil reports.
The investigation into the spy agency scandal is going virtually nowhere, with less than 2 weeks to go before it's scheduled to end. Chief of the National Intelligence Service Nam Jae-jun appeared for questioning before the parliamentary committee overseeing the probe on Monday. Although the briefing was not made public, speeches by the spy agency chief and 4 lawmakers from both rival parties were released. In his remarks, NIS Chief Nam apologized for creating a nationwide scandal and said the agency would work toward regaining its credibility. However, the lawmakers from the 2 rival parties at the briefing were split over who was responsible.
I believe that this was a failed political maneuvering by the Democratic Party, as they tried to use the National Intelligence Service to interfere with the presidential election.
It's not possible for the spy agency chief to have disclosed the inter-Korean summit transcripts alone. If he did, he should be held accountable. If the president knew this, then the president should also apologize to the people.
The two parties are still at odds over the witness list for the probe and whether to extend the parliamentary probe beyond the self-imposed deadline of August 15th. Meanwhile, to end the political deadlock over the NIS scandal, Hwang Woo-yeol, chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, proposed three-way talks on Monday with President Park Geun-hye and the opposition leader. The Democratic Party said it was open to talk if the president agrees. The presidential office of Cheongwade has not yet responded to the proposal. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Could there be yet another corruption scandal lurking in the nuclear industry's shadows here in Korea? Well, an opposition party lawmaker has raised that possibility, casting further doubt on the industry, which is already under investigation for faked safety tests for critical nuclear plant equipment. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Yet another revelation of irregularities has rocked Korea's nuclear power industry, already reeling from one snowballing corruption scandal. Lawmaker Kim Ki-sik of the opposition Democratic Party has accused the government in power in 2010 of providing a policy loan to an unqualified supplier, saying he believes a powerful ruling party politician may have even taken a kickback. Kim alleges that a broker with links to a ruling party heavyweight arranged the policy loans with a large supplier of water treatment systems used in nuclear power plants, despite the fact that such loans are reserved for small and mid-sized companies. The supplier was awarded with a loan of about $60 million in 2010, which accounted for 40% of the total sum allocated for the nuclear industry. The revelation came after the Busan District Court issued an arrest warrant for the broker in an unrelated bribery case as part of a probe into corruption ties between nuclear power plants, suppliers, and safety inspectors. A prosecution investigation into the nuclear power industry that began in April has revealed that more than half of the country's 23 nuclear power plants had installed parts that came with fabricated safety certificates. This has led to the closing of 3 nuclear power stations since then. The scandals are raising questions about nuclear safety in the country and leaving the people of Korea with less energy sources to pull from during a scorching hot summer. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
South Korea has urged North Korea to agree to its final proposal for talks on the shuttered Gaeseong industrial complex, as Pyongyang has remained tight-lipped for more than a week now. With no clear answer from the North, the South Korean government says its patience is now wearing thin. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sang-hee follows us this report.
Getting neither a yes nor a no from the North on its week-old proposal to continue talks on reopening their joint business park, South Korea reiterated its call for a response on Monday, saying its patience is running thin.
We called through our inter-Korean hotline at 9 a.m. this morning, and there was no answer. So we are urging the North to show its will through actions rather than silence.
South Korea made its final proposal last Monday for a 7th round of talks on resuming operations at the Gaeseong industrial complex, but the North has yet to respond. The two Koreas have held 6 rounds of working-level discussions last month on reopening the jointly run factory zone in the north, but have so far failed to reach an agreement. South Korea wants the North to guarantee it will never again unilaterally shut down the complex as it did 4 months ago, while the North is pushing for an immediate resumption of operations with no preconditions. Seoul has warned it will undertake a grave measure if Pyongyang does not agree to such safeguards, and many believe it could be considering a complete closure of the complex. With some 53,000 North Korean workers working for 123 South Korean firms, the complex is seen as the last remaining symbol of economic cooperation between the two Koreas. More than 100 South Korean businesses with factories in Gaeseong have filed for a total of $250 million in insurance claims, an amount that Seoul plans to pay off beginning this week. Once the payments are made, the ownership of the factories and related assets will be handed over to the government. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Geun-hye and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2%.
And in the tech realm, Samsung has expressed disappointment over the Obama administration's decision to overturn an international trade ban on older models of Apple products. But the Korean tech giant is hardly conceding defeat. Samsung has already filed an appeal to the U.S. trade agency, claiming that Apple did infringe on some of its other patents. Yoo Yeon reports.
It was back in June when the International Trade Commission decided that Apple infringed on one of Samsung's patents, placing a sales ban on some of its older gadgets, including the iPhone 4 and iPad 2. That sales ban has been lifted by the Obama administration, but that doesn't mean the California-based tech company can celebrate just yet. According to industry sources here in Korea on Monday, Samsung has submitted an appeal to the June ruling, claiming that Apple not only infringed on one patent, but other commercial ones as well. If the ITC decides that Apple did indeed infringe on even just one of the other commercial patents, this would lead to a direct import ban, a decision that could not be overturned by the Obama administration. That's because these are commercial patents, not the standard essential patents President Obama was able to reverse on Saturday by using the so-called fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory standard. Another critical ruling is just days ahead. In October last year, the ITC announced a preliminary ruling in favor of Apple, which stated that Samsung had infringed on 4 of Apple's patents. On Friday, the ITC will announce whether it plans to uphold that ruling. If it does, that will deal another blow to Samsung. But in order to maintain balance between the two tech rivals, experts say President Obama would most likely veto that decision too.
Consumers can be harmed by import bans, so in a situation where one is not dominating the other, they might have wanted to send a message to them, telling them to come to terms with each other.
The models subject to the upcoming reviews are older Samsung products, including the Galaxy S, Galaxy S2, and the Nexus. Yoo Yeon, Arirang News.
The Korean market has long been a destination for Chinese investors, but never like this. South Korea's Financial Supervisory Service reported Monday that Chinese investments in the Korean stock, bond, and real estate markets reached 19.8 trillion won, or about $18 billion as of the end of June. That's a 41-fold jump since the end of 2008, and the trend is likely to continue as the Chinese government has plans to soon let individuals invest directly in foreign securities. The development is a double-edged sword for Korea. While the increased presence of Chinese investors helps to diversify foreign capital in the local market, its increasing dependence on Chinese capital makes the market vulnerable in the event that capital suddenly leaves.
The United States has extended embassy closures by a week in the Middle East and Africa as a precaution after an Al-Qaeda threat that U.S. lawmakers said was the most serious in years. 19 U.S. embassies and consulates would be closed through Saturday out of an abundance of caution. Here's Arirang News' Park Geun-hye.
In an interview with NBC News on Sunday, Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee said the current terror threat, measured by the amount of chatter, reminded him of what he saw in the run-up to 9/11.
An awful lot of chatter out there. Chatter means conversation among terrorists about the planning that's going on, very reminiscent of what we saw pre-9/11. We're paying very, very close attention to the chatter that's going on, and I can tell you, David, this is the most serious threat that I've seen in the last several years.
Chairman of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence, Peter King, also warned the security threat from Al-Qaeda is very specific. He added there's very little doubt some serious attack planning is going on.
And this is a wake-up call. Al-Qaeda is in many ways stronger than it was before 9/11 because it's mutated and it's spread and it can come at us from different directions.
A member of the House Intelligence Committee also said a major attack is being mentioned among high-level Al-Qaeda members in the Arabian Peninsula. The terror threat prompted Washington to take the unprecedented step of shutting more than 20 U.S. embassies and consulates around the world on Sunday. While some of the diplomatic outposts shut down on Sunday will reopen on Monday, the U.S. State Department says 16 embassies and 3 consulates in Middle East and in Africa will remain closed through August 10th. The State Department also issued a global travel alert for American citizens that will stay in force until August 31st. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Back here in this country, a host of lawmakers and experts representing the traditional Korean craft industry put their heads together at the National Assembly Library on Monday afternoon in a bid to bolster the industry through legislation. A bill to do just that was submitted at the National Assembly in January and will be up for a vote at the start of the National Assembly's regular Assembly session next month. The seminar stressed that a strengthened craft industry could create more jobs in the nation in line with the Park administration's push for a creative economy. Now, ways to develop and support the industry were also discussed there, such as linking the nation's tourism and K-pop industries with the sales of traditional Korean crafts. Now, Korean adoptees are returning to their country of birth in larger numbers every year, and just this past weekend, hundreds were here in Seoul for a major conference called The Gathering that draws similar numbers every 3 years.
I really like the name, The Gathering. Well, meanwhile, revisions to Korea's adoption law went into effect a year ago this month, impacting the system of inter-country adoption from Korea and adoptees' right to access information.
Right, and we have a very special guest this evening, and to give us some insights into these issues, we have with us Kim Stoker, the representative of Adoptee Solidarity Korea, based here in Seoul. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, your organization was founded, I believe, in 2004. Now, what is your mission and how do you carry it out? Let's just briefly talk about that as a starter.
Okay, well, ASK was founded, as you said, in 2004 by a group of adoptees that were actually friends, and we're interested in looking at the issue of inter-country adoption from sort of a critical perspective. And our mission now is to affect change in adoption policy and practice, and we do this through education, advocacy, and community building.
Okay, it seems like more adoptees are coming to Korea through events like The Gathering.
Yeah.
So they are choosing to build a life, start their second stage in their life in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
What brings them back and what keeps them here?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different reasons why people come here. A lot of people come here because, you know, we're Koreans, we were born here, and we're interested in searching for our roots, but it's not always about that. A lot of times it's just curiosity. You become an adult, you come to a point in your life where you can travel and you have the means to come to Korea, because it's not, you know, it's expensive to come here and all of that. And I think a lot of people are really interested in learning more about Korean culture, studying Korean language, and there's so many things that are more appealing about Korea, I guess, than it was a few years ago or several years ago.
So it's wrong for most people to generalize in this drama of trying to retrace their roots or coming to a full circle in their circle of life, right?
Yeah, a lot of people do that for sure, but I don't think every adoptee just comes here to search for their roots. Yeah.
Right, and you're an adoptee yourself.
I am.
And
yeah.
Your organization was actually part of the coalition that wrote the revisions to Korea's adoption law. Now, what are the major changes that have been made to the existing law, and who are the affected, and what impacts do we see in the future?
Yeah, well, the special adoption law is really sort of complicated, but for us, as adoptees specifically, we are interested in access to birth family records. And for us, as an adoptee organization that was a part of the coalition, that was a really important part. Because in the past, well, there are actually 4 agencies in Korea that regulate international adoptions. And so, let's say, for example, an adoptee wants to search for their birth family, they would go directly to their agency. And it might really depend how they're treated based on who's the social worker handling their case, what time of day it is, what time of year it is, and so it's been really arbitrary. And so with the special adoption law, we hope to see some systemization in terms of birth family search, where adoptees can go to a designated, what's called a central authority, and they can access their birth family records from that place, and all of the agencies are supposed to give the adoption records into a database at that central authority. We're not at that point yet. It's only been a year since the adoption law was passed, and so I like to be optimistic about it, because I think that hopefully the central authority will be able to fully handle our birth search process. Yeah.
So like you said, it's been a year, and what kind of changes have we seen so far?
I don't think we've seen that many changes, and we'd like to see more changes. I think that with a lot of things, the Ministry of Health and Welfare actually is the ministry in charge of a lot of this. And like a lot of ministries, they're sort of short on funding. So I hope to see some more funding going into the Central Authority. And it's also related to Korea wants to ratify the Hague Convention, and they hope to do that within the next 2 years.
So it's more or less in its infancy, and hopefully the sky's the limit for some positive developments.
So.
Okay, now let's focus a little bit on the challenges they face once they're in Korea, although they have these organizations and other parties to help them out. What are some of the ways they can work out and address these issues also?
Well, definitely one of the biggest challenges for any overseas adoptee or any foreigner, because we're Koreans and we're foreigners at the same time, is language. So that's a big challenge. But these days, you know, with this sort of influx in Asian tourists, it's not so strange to be having an Asian face and not speaking Korean as it was maybe 10 years ago. But language is definitely a challenge. You know, culture is a challenge. Culture is a really diverse thing. It's not just one thing. But, you know, there are increasing work opportunities for adoptees that want to stay here long term and work and either work in their field of expertise or perhaps teaching English. Yeah, so we see a diversification in the kinds of opportunities for adoptees now.
Would you say that there is a change in the way that Korea is viewed, Korea as a birthplace is viewed by Korean adoptees, you know, in this generation, among those in their 20s right now, than when you were in your 20s, you know, back in the 90s?
Yeah, definitely. When I first came to Korea, it was in the mid-90s, and it was very, very, very different. And so, you know, with the sort of increase in media access and various types of media, I think adoptees are really able to access a lot of information. And so adoptees are much more prepared, I think, for the realities of coming here. And they're much more informed than I was when I came here in the mid-90s. Yeah, so there's a lot of dynamic things about Korea, and I think adoptees can feel proud of their Korean heritage, which I think for maybe my generation, that wasn't the case as much.
But one thing we know for sure about Korea is that we tend to change and adapt really fast. So hopefully this is just the beginning, and we'll have more greater changes to come. Well, Kim Stoker from Adoptee Solidarity Korea, thank you for coming and talking about the changes to Korea's adoption law. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Time for weather. We'll turn to our Hannah Kim. So Hannah, monsoon still on, right?
I know, right? It's pouring cats and dogs in parts of the central provinces, and the showers may be accompanied by thunder and lightning.
You know, sometimes, Hannah, I would rather just rain all at once instead of having all these sporadic passing showers. But I hear we'll have more precipitation tomorrow.
That's right, Keun-young. Today we had showers on and off throughout the day, anywhere from passing drizzles to heavy downpours. Tomorrow it will be similar under mostly cloudy skies with a chance of regional rain in the afternoon. Your best bet will be to have a small umbrella umbrella on you at all times just in case you get caught up in the rain. If we take a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, now that our monsoon season is technically over, we expect temperatures to soar above the 30s with sticky and humid air. Seoul will start off the morning at 26 and reach 33 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, cities in the south like Daegu and Busan will peak at 35 and 33 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, we'll have gradually sunnier skies and our highs will hit 33. Daejeon will have mostly cloudy conditions while Dokdo tops out at 30. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Hannah Kim. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for that, Hannah. And that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Chan.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.